poverty is not just a lack of money, it's a lack of vision, a lack of discipline, a lack of consistency. It happens by default, but wealth happens only by design. Struggle requires no plan. It comes free. Wealth demands intention, vision, and consistency. And the moment you change how you think, the world begins to change how it rewards you. When I first started working, I thought the secret to wealth was simply to make more money. But over time, I learned something that changed everything. It doesn't matter how much you earn if you can't manage what you keep. The rule is simple, but it carries the weight of a lifetime. Spend less than you earn. That little gap between income and expenses, as small as it may seem, is where wealth is born. Too many people raise their lifestyle to match their paycheck. They get a raise, and suddenly the car gets bigger, the house gets fancier, and the vacation's more expensive. And yet, at the end of the month, they're still broke, just at a higher level. That's not wealth, that's a trap. Wealth doesn't start with millions, it starts with discipline. I remember when I was barely making enough to get by, I decided that no matter what, I would carve out a small portion for savings, even if it was just a few dollars. It wasn't the amount that mattered, it was the habit. That act of keeping something for myself, of creating that gap, gave me a sense of control. It was like telling myself, I'm the master of my money, not the other way around. Think of money like water flowing into a bucket. If there's a hole at the bottom, if your spending matches or exceeds your income, it doesn't matter how much pours in, the bucket never fills. But if you patch the hole, even just a little, the water starts to rise. And once it rises, you have something to work with. That's where investment begins, where opportunities open, where freedom starts to take shape. It may feel small at first, but over time, that discipline compounds. The simple practice of living beneath your means builds the foundation for everything else: security, growth, and eventually independence. If you master this rule, you give yourself the chance to build everything else on solid ground. Wealth begins in the space you create between what you earn and what you spend. Guard that space, and it will guard your future. When I was young, someone once told me, if you let money sit idle, it begins to shrink. At first I didn't understand. How can money shrink if it's sitting in a bank account? But then I learned about inflation, about rising costs, and about the silent erosion of idle cash. And that's when I realized saving alone is not enough. Savings protect, but they don't multiply. To build wealth, you must take the next step. Turn savings into investments. Money must be put to work, just like people. Think of your savings as seeds. You can keep them locked away in a jar, but seeds in a jar never grow. They don't produce fruit. They don't multiply. They just sit there, waiting. But when you take those seeds and plant them in fertile soil, they grow into something far greater than what you started with. That's what investing does. It transforms money from being a static tool into a living, multiplying force. I remember when I saved my first $1,000. It felt like a mountain at the time. I could have spent it, or I could have left it to sit. Instead, I decided to learn how to put it to work. I studied, I asked questions, I looked for opportunities I could understand. I put some into a small business venture and some into long-term instruments that grew slowly but steadily. And over time, that small decision began to change everything. It wasn't overnight, it wasn't flashy, but the quiet growth turned into momentum. The goal isn't just to protect your money, it's to multiply it. Every dollar should be like an employee out there working for you, creating value while you sleep. And the beauty of investing is that, done wisely, it starts building streams of income that don't require your constant labor. That's when freedom begins to take shape. If you want to build wealth, don't let your money sit idle. Direct it into assets that appreciate, that produce, that give back. Let every dollar you save find a field where it can grow. Because idle money shrinks, but invested money multiplies. One of the easiest traps to fall into is spending money you haven't yet earned. The temptation is everywhere. Credit cards, car loans, buy now, pay later plans. It whispers, enjoy it today, worry about it tomorrow. But tomorrow always comes, and with it comes the bill, the interest, and the weight of yesterday's pleasures. Spending future money is like putting chains on your own ankles and then wondering why you can't run forward. I've watched good people work hard all week, only to hand over their paycheck to debts from things they no longer even enjoy. The meal is gone, but the payment remains. The vacation is over, but the interest lingers. The shiny car feels old after a year, but the loan stretches on for 5. Debt, when used for consumption, becomes a tax on the undisciplined. It steals not just your money, but your freedom, your peace of mind, and even your ability to take advantage of opportunities when they come. I remember a friend who once financed almost everything, his furniture, his appliances, even his vacations. He looked like he was living well, but in reality, he was drowning. Every month, the payments left him with nothing. When an opportunity came to invest in a promising venture, he couldn't. His future was already mortgaged to his past decisions. Meanwhile, another man I knew lived modestly, avoided consumer debt, and when the same opportunity came, he was ready. He didn't owe yesterday, so he could invest in tomorrow. The rule is simple. If it doesn't produce income or appreciate in value, don't borrow for it. If you must use debt, let it be to acquire an asset that pays for itself and more. Don't enslave your future for a moment of pleasure. Today, the ice cream melts, the clothes wear out, the gadgets fade, but the debt endures. Freedom is found in living within your present means. Spend only what you have earned, and let tomorrow's income be free to build your future, not repay your past. Never spend future money. It costs far more than the price tag suggests. It's easy to dream about handling large sums of money, but the truth is this: if you can't master the little, you'll never master the much. Wealth doesn't begin when you get a big check. It begins when you respect the small amounts that already pass through your hands. Every dollar is a silent test, asking, can you be trusted with more? And how you treat the dollar determines the answer. I've seen people who say, when I start making more, then I'll start saving, then I'll start investing, then I'll get disciplined. But that's not how it works. Earning more only magnifies your current habits. If you waste 100, you'll waste 1,000. If you spend recklessly with 1,000, you'll spend recklessly with 10,000. Money doesn't change you, it reveals you. I remember when I was young, I had very little. Sometimes it felt like there was no room to save or invest. But I decided to put away $1 here, $5 there. I learned to track small expenses, to notice where every coin went. That discipline built something inside me. Later, when the checks got bigger, the same habits followed. The numbers grew, but the behavior stayed the same. That's the secret. Wealth is less about the amount and more about the stewardship. Think about a farmer. If he wastes a few seeds, he'll waste a whole harvest. But if he treats even one seed with care, planting it, watering it, protecting it, he multiplies it into something far greater. Money works the same way. Treat every dollar like a seed. Don't despise it because it's small. Plant it, and it can grow into something that feeds your future. So here's the rule. Master small amounts. Track your first 100 before you ever dream about handling 100,000. Respect the dollar in your pocket as much as the investment in your portfolio, because the habits you build with little are the very habits that will prepare you for much. Wealth doesn't start with abundance. It starts with discipline over the small. We spend so much time thinking about how to grow our money. But one of the greatest lessons I ever learned is this: protecting what you already have is just as important as multiplying it. You see, it only takes one bad move, one careless decision, one tempting shortcut to wipe out years of steady effort. And that's why capital must be protected ruthlessly. Growth is slow and steady, but loss can be quick and devastating. I've met people who worked hard for 10 or 15 years, saved diligently, and then one day got swept away by a too-good-to-be-true opportunity. They put everything in, didn't ask enough questions, didn't write out the risks or the exit plan, and when it went wrong, they lost not just their money, but their confidence too. That's a dangerous place to be. Because once confidence is gone, people often give up on the whole wealth-building journey. When I started investing, I had a mentor who drilled this into me. Don't risk what you can't afford to lose. And don't risk it in things you don't fully understand. That simple rule saved me from countless mistakes. Sure, I missed out on some fast money stories, but I also kept my capital intact so I could continue playing the game. Remember, you don't have to swing at every pitch. You only need to swing at the right ones. Think of your capital like the roots of a tree. If the roots are cut, the branches die, no matter how healthy they looked yesterday. Your job is to guard those roots, your savings, your investments, your assets, with caution and wisdom. Ask questions, demand clarity. Write out the risk, the reward, and how you'll exit before you ever put in a single dollar. Because here's the truth: you can recover from missed opportunities, but it's much harder to recover from catastrophic losses. Protect your capital like a fortress. Guard it as if your future depends on it, because it does. When people think about wealth, they usually picture stacks of cash, shiny cars, or big houses. But the real starting point isn't money, it's you. Because here's the truth: your wallet will only grow as much as you do. The skills you acquire, the knowledge you build, the mindset you develop, these compound far faster than money ever can. If you invest in yourself first, the wallet will always catch up. I remember a time when I was broke, not just financially, but in ideas. I thought the problem was my paycheck, but the real problem was me. I didn't know enough, I didn't have the skills, and I wasn't valuable enough in the marketplace. That was a tough realization. But once I started dedicating time and money into learning, buying books, attending seminars, finding mentors, things began to change. My income didn't jump overnight, but I became sharper, wiser, and more prepared to recognize and seize opportunities. You see, money without wisdom is like water poured into a bucket full of holes. It leaks away, but knowledge patches those holes. It teaches you how to manage, multiply, and protect what you earn. And here's the best part: once you learn something valuable, no one can take it from you. Money can be lost, businesses can fail, markets can crash, but the skills you build stay with you, ready to be used again and again. So before you rush to fill your wallet, ask yourself, what have I done today to fill my mind? Spend 30 minutes a day reading about wealth, business, or personal growth. Spend part of your income not on entertainment, but on education. Buy the course, attend the workshop, sit with the mentor, because every dollar you put into your own development pays the highest return. Your wallet is just a reflection of the value you bring. Make yourself more valuable, and the money will find its way to you. Most people spend their entire lives working for money, trading hours for dollars, and thinking that's the only way. But the real shift happens when you learn to make money work for you. That's when freedom begins. Because if all you have is a paycheck, the day you stop working, the money stops flowing. But when you build assets, things that earn whether you show up or not, you've created a worker that never sleeps, never complains, and never takes a vacation. I'll never forget when I first understood this. Early on, I thought the key to getting ahead was to just work harder, longer, faster. But then someone wiser told me, you'll wear yourself out before you ever get wealthy that way. You need to get your money a job. That line stuck with me. So I began to think differently. Instead of just earning and spending, I started directing a portion of my income into things that could work on my behalf. Investments, businesses, assets that had the power to grow even while I slept. And here's the beauty of it. Your money doesn't complain about overtime. You can put it to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A few dollars in the right place, given time, can become hundreds, even thousands. Real estate that pays rent, stocks that pay dividends, businesses that generate profit without you standing there. These are the streams that eventually free you from depending solely on your own two hands. It doesn't have to be huge at the start. Maybe it's $50 invested every month. Maybe it's a small side hustle that becomes an asset. What matters is the principle that some of your money is always working. Because if you don't find a way to put your money to work, you'll spend your whole life working for money. And that's not freedom. That's a trap. The ultimate goal is this. One day, your money makes more for you in a month than you could make with your labor. When that day comes, you'll know you've stepped into true wealth. One of the greatest temptations in the journey toward wealth is to taste the first fruits too quickly. You work hard, you discipline yourself, you see your savings grow, your investments produce a little profit, and the natural instinct is to reward yourself a new car, a fancy dinner, maybe even a vacation. But here's the truth. If you eat the fruit before you've planted enough seeds back into the ground, you'll never grow an orchard. Think of money like a harvest. When a farmer gathers his crops, he doesn't eat everything he gathers. He sets aside the best portion as seed for the next season. Why? Because he knows if he consumes it all, his future's gone. Wealth works the same way. Every dollar of profit you reinvest is like planting seeds for a bigger harvest tomorrow. But every dollar you consume too early is a seed that never gets the chance to grow. I remember when I first began to see some success. The checks were bigger than I had ever imagined. My first thought was, finally, I can buy those things I've always wanted. But I held back. Instead of indulging, I put the money back into my business, into investments, into opportunities that multiplied. And because I chose discipline over impulse, those seeds grew into orchards that produced year after year. That's what allowed me to enjoy luxuries later, not just once, but for the rest of my life. The practical rule is simple. When profits come in, don't rush to increase your lifestyle. First, increase your assets. Reinvest into the machine that produces your wealth. Let your money compound. Let your streams multiply. Let your orchard grow strong. Then, when the harvest is abundant, you'll have plenty to enjoy without ever threatening your future. Discipline is saying no today so you can say yes tomorrow, and keep saying yes for the rest of your life. One of the greatest tests on the path to wealth is the ability to delay gratification. Human nature wants rewards now. We want the car today, the vacation this year, the nice clothes this weekend. But here's the truth. Every time you trade long-term freedom for short-term pleasure, you rob your future self. The secret of wealth is patience. And patience is nothing more than learning to wait with purpose. I've often said that broke people live for the weekend, while wealthy people live for the decade. It's a mindset. The poor say, "How can I feel good today?" The wealthy ask, "What can I build today that will let me feel good for a lifetime?" That shift from immediate comfort to future freedom is what separates the masses from the few who reach financial independence. I remember when I first started making some extra money, the temptation was strong. Friends were buying new cars, upgrading their houses, showing off what their paychecks could buy. And I almost fell for it. But I realized if I joined them, I'd also join their struggles, debt, stress, and the endless chase of trying to keep up. So instead, I kept my lifestyle simple, and I put my energy into investments, skills, and opportunities that promised long-term rewards. Here's the practical test. When you want something big, wait. Give it 30 days. If, after a month, you still want it, and it fits your financial plan, then maybe it's the right time. But often, you'll find the desire fades, and you'll be glad you kept that seed to plant instead of consuming it. Delaying gratification isn't about denying yourself joy. It's about buying your freedom, because freedom doesn't come from what you buy today. It comes from the discipline that ensures tomorrow is secure. Wealth is simply the reward for patience well practiced. Wealth doesn't grow in confusion, it grows in order. Chaos with money is what keeps most people broke. They earn, they spend, they wonder where it all went, and then they repeat the cycle. But money, like a garden, doesn't flourish without structure. You need systems. You need clarity. You need to tell every dollar where to go instead of wondering where it disappeared. I learned early on that the marketplace doesn't reward confusion. If my desk was messy, if my notes were scattered, if my goals weren't written down, I found my results mirrored that same disorder. And money works the same way. If your finances are in chaos, your wealth will be in chaos. But the moment you give structure, everything begins to multiply. One of the simplest systems I ever built was giving every dollar a job. When money came in, I didn't just let it sit there, waiting to be spent. I assigned it. Some went into savings, some into investments, some for living, some for giving. That way, I wasn't relying on willpower in the moment. I had already made the decision ahead of time. And that structure created peace of mind. Instead of stress, I had clarity. Automation makes this even easier. You can set up transfers to savings and investments so they happen before you even see the money. That way, discipline is built into the system, not left to chance. A confused dollar will always vanish, but a directed dollar will grow. Think of your financial life as an organization. If you run it with order, it expands. If you let it fall into disorder, it shrinks. Wealth is not an accident. It's the byproduct of intentional systems repeated over time. Build the order, and the multiplication will follow. It's a strange paradox, but one of the great truths of life. The more you give, the more you seem to receive. Most people think wealth is only about accumulation, stacking more, storing more, holding on tight. But the secret is, wealth flows to those who let it flow through them. Contribution is not the loss of wealth, it is the multiplier of wealth. I remember the first time I set aside a portion of my income to give. It wasn't much. I didn't have much to give. But the act itself changed me. It shifted my focus from scarcity to abundance. Instead of asking, what do I have to hold back? I began asking, what do I have to share? That question altered the way I lived, the way I worked, and the way I related to people. And what surprised me most was how opportunities, friendships, and even financial gains seemed to find their way back to me in greater measure. Contribution builds influence. People trust those who give. They follow those who serve. And in the marketplace, trust and influence are worth more than gold. When you give your time, your knowledge, your resources, you open doors that money alone can't unlock. Wealth is not just what you keep in your bank account. It's the goodwill, the reputation, the network you build through generosity. Contribution also gives wealth a purpose. What's the use of all the money in the world if it dies with you and leaves no trace? True wealth outlives the one who built it. It builds schools, feeds families, inspires dreams, and creates futures. When you give, you plant seeds in places you may never see grow, but others will harvest. So don't just measure your success by what you accumulate. Measure it also by what you contribute. Because contribution is what turns money into meaning and wealth into legacy. One of the biggest mistakes people make with money and success is thinking too small in terms of time. They ask, "What can I get by Friday?" Or "How much can I make this month?" But true wealth doesn't live in days or weeks. It lives in decades. The wealthy don't chase weekends. They build futures. They stretch their vision out 10, 20, even 30 years, and then they make daily choices that align with that vision. I used to live paycheck to paycheck, always worried about Friday night. My mind was trapped in short-term survival. Then I was challenged to start thinking in decades. At first, it seemed impossible. Decades? I could barely think about the next week. But once I began writing down what I wanted my life to look like 10 years from now, what kind of house I'd live in, what income I'd have, what impact I'd make, suddenly my daily decisions started to shift. The long-term picture gave meaning to the short-term sacrifices. That's how compounding works. Not just compounding money, but compounding habits, compounding skills, compounding relationships. A single dollar invested today doesn't mean much, but in 20 years it could be thousands. Reading 10 pages of a good book today won't transform your life overnight, but in 10 years you'll be a different person entirely. Daily disciplines don't pay off tomorrow. They pay off over time. The danger of short-term thinking is that it pushes you towards shortcuts, gambling, overspending, and giving up when results don't come fast enough. But if you think in decades, you understand that patience is part of the process. You don't need to see the tree tomorrow. You just need to keep watering the seed. So don't just ask what you'll get this week. Ask instead, who will I become in 10 years if I stay disciplined today? Because wealth, like character, is built one decision at a time, stacked patiently over years, until one day you look up and realize your vision has become reality. Wealth doesn't grow in the dark. You can't ignore money and expect it to multiply. What you track improves, and what you measure, you master. Too many people work hard, earn their pay, spend it quickly, and then wonder at the end of the month where it all went. The truth is, money that isn't watched always disappears. But the moment you shine a light on it, the moment you give it attention, it starts to behave differently. I remember when I first started keeping a simple notebook of my finances. Nothing fancy, just what came in, what went out, and where it went. And I'll tell you, the very act of writing it down changed my behavior. I thought twice before making small, careless purchases, because I knew I'd have to see them on the page. Awareness created discipline, and discipline created progress. The wealthy review their money the way a pilot reviews his instruments. You don't fly a plane by guessing. You fly it by monitoring altitude, fuel, and direction. Money works the same way. Set a regular review. Once a month, sit down and look at your income, your expenses, your savings, and your investments. Ask, am I ahead or behind? Is my net worth growing? Am I moving toward my goals or drifting further away? Some people avoid these reviews because they're afraid of what they'll see. But ignoring the truth doesn't change it. Facing it does. Even if the numbers are small, even if the debts are big, awareness is the first step to turning it around. Wealth is not built by luck. It's built by attention. When you measure, you improve. When you review, you adjust. And when you stay consistent, the numbers begin to grow in your favor. Wealth is less about what you make and more about how closely you manage what you have. Debt is a dangerous servant but a powerful master. Used wrongly, it will trap you, burden you, and steal tomorrow before it arrives. But used wisely, debt can become a tool, a lever, a bridge that helps you move faster toward wealth. The key is in understanding the difference. Too many people borrow for consumption, for cars, clothes, or entertainment, things that begin losing value the moment they're bought. That's not debt as a tool, that's debt as a chain. And those chains get heavy. They weigh on your mind, your energy, and your future. But there's another kind of borrowing, and that's borrowing for assets. If you borrow to buy something that generates income, something that pays for itself and more, that's using debt like a craftsman uses a hammer. I've seen people take out loans for rental properties that produce cash flow greater than the cost of the loan. That's smart leverage. Or a business loan used carefully to expand production, create new customers, and grow profits that can accelerate wealth. But the principle must always be this: if you borrow, make sure the return is greater than the payment. Otherwise, it's not an investment, it's a liability. I'll never forget when I was young and eager, I almost signed for a loan just to impress others with a new car. It would have looked sharp in the driveway, but it would have drained me every month with nothing in return. I caught myself in time, and instead, I began saving for assets. That single decision put me years ahead of where I would have been. Debt can either enslave you or empower you. The choice lies in discipline, patience, and clarity of purpose. Don't use it to buy toys. Use it to build tools. True wealth isn't measured only by the size of your bank account while you're alive. It's measured by what continues after you're gone. If all your efforts end with you, then you've simply built comfort, not legacy. Wealth that matters is wealth that outlives you, wealth that provides for your family, supports causes you believe in, and becomes a foundation for the generations that follow. When I first began earning more than I needed to survive, I thought the goal was just to enjoy it, to upgrade my house, take the trips, buy the things I had once dreamed about. But I quickly realized something. None of those things last. A car wears out. A house ages. Pleasures fade. But if you take that same money and put it into assets, businesses, real estate, investments, those things can outlast you. They can continue to provide value long after your time has passed. That's when wealth takes on meaning. I've seen families torn apart because there was no system, no plan, no thought about legacy. Money was earned but not directed, and when the earner passed, confusion and conflict followed. On the other hand, I've seen families where one generation made the decision to plant seeds for the future. They set up trusts, created businesses that children could step into, passed down not only money but wisdom. That's real wealth, because it multiplies through time. Don't think only in terms of your own needs. Ask yourself, what will my children inherit besides my debts or my bills? Will they inherit principles, systems, and assets? Will they have something to build upon? Take the time to draft a plan, to set aside resources, and to teach the values that created the wealth in the first place. Wealth without legacy is shallow. True wealth is generational. Wealth is not built on moods, nor is it sustained by luck. It is built and preserved through principles, those steady, unchanging laws that govern financial success, just like gravity governs the earth. If you try to build your wealth based on emotions, you'll spend when you feel good, hold back when you feel afraid, and chase opportunities when excitement is high. That path leads to inconsistency, and inconsistency never produces lasting results. Discipline, patience, and consistency, those are the companions of true wealth. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, when I made my first real profits, my emotions got the better of me. One good month, and suddenly I thought I could buy whatever I wanted, as if success would always flow the same way. Another time, I let fear stop me from investing in an opportunity I had studied well, only to watch someone else reap the rewards. Both times I let emotions, not principles, drive my decisions. And both times it cost me dearly.